This is Dr. Kim, licensed clinical psychologist and host of Love to Heal. Today we have an amazing guest. He is Nicholas Davenport, and he is a cognitive conditioning expert. Thank you so much for being here. I'm so excited.
Me too.
I
Get it.
love what, let's get it. I love what you do. And, you've worked with a lot of athletes, singers. It's pretty impressive. But even more impressive is actually all the research you've done and the actual work that you do on a daily basis with drills and everything, getting people ready cognitively, meaning training the brain. How did you get into this? Can you walk us through?
It's a crazy story. I don't know how much time we got, but basically, my background started probably similar like yours. I was an undergrad psych major, and basically when I graduated, I didn't know what to do. Like, I don't know about you, but I only thought being a therapist was the only route a psychology major could take. So I
Hmm.
enrolled in a master's program to be a mental health therapist. And not saying I was not into it, it didn't really seem like as good as a fit for me. And then I had a classmate, her name's Nicole Smith. I haven't talked to her probably since then. This is 2012. And she was like, you probably would like something called sports psychology because I'm a former collegiate athlete. I ran track in college. I played football pretty much all of high school, played baseball my whole life. So I've always been an athlete. So she was like, you probably would like sports psychology. I'm like, wait, what's that? Like sports and psychology? And for some reason, I had no idea this was a field. So being impulsive as I am, I switched to that major, and unfortunately, I didn't get to finish because I had ended up having a car accident. Then I had my daughter, so it got derailed. But I always wanted to get back to like combining the performance of like physical things as well as mental. So through years of research, getting back to it, I then embarked on it, finished up my master's in sports psychology. Then I would go to pursue a doctorate in clinical psychology, and I would specialize in health psychology like yourself. And I didn't finish that because that's when Mind Body One, the business. So around all this time, I had my daughter. My great grandmother would die of Alzheimer's, and that really made me think, like, is this really where I should be? And I don't know what was it. I said, put all that aside, and financially speaking, that might have been dumb because like more money to be made as a psychologist, a clinical psychologist, than what I'm doing now is something trying to embark and create a new lane. But that's just how I am as a person. I like to follow my heart, my gut, my whatever. So basically, that led me down this road, and probably since 2014, I've been building and building and building to what you see as Mind Body One today. It didn't start off like this, but it got to this point. So it's been a
So it's
crazy road.
called Mind Body One. That is your company. And yeah,
Yes.
actually, I think it's very scalable compared to psychologists. I think it's nice to do many different things in the field. But like yourself, I was in sports psychology, but I found it after I got into the doctoral program. So I was like, yes, because I grew up playing sports, not on your level, but that was so amazing. So then I got to teach doing that. But you are the next level. Like people are genuinely attracted to what you do, and you are highly sought after. Definitely seen your Instagram, and you are all over the place as far as treating
Yeah.
professionals and people that are already on the top of their game but want to take it to the next level. And do you feel like this can apply to everyday people? Like, is it just athletes and singers, or can it be everyday people that are just going through something that want to get into more of a peak mindset state?
That's crazy you bring that up because my associate, kind of call him my right hand man, his name is Fernando, and we were talking about this last night because general population is where I originally started with when I embarked on this endeavor, and I quickly saw, like you said, it was a harder market to crack because we know fitness. Like I would say, as early as probably the late '70s, fitness started becoming more of a thing. Like people, what's that one song? Let's get physical. Olivia Newton-John. Right?
Uh-huh.
So for the last 40 years, physical fitness has been known. Like we need to do this, and it's taken off. Like, there's gyms everywhere. There's Orange Theory. There's Crunch, whatever.
Yeah.
So I kind of saw that maybe this is a lane for the general pop, and that's how it started. Saying, "Hey, let's get people who want to work out, but add these cognitive elements, these psychological elements, teach them things that mentally will help them." But like you said, that's a harder market to crack. So now that I'm getting like, I've established myself in some bigger name fields, I feel that that's where I want to get back to because I'm pretty much putting together a program that can be scalable, like you said, to a general audience. Because at the end of the day, and obviously you know this better than anyone, our mental health and it's what leads the show. Obviously, you want to have a physical, capable body because if the heart health is bad or respiratory health is bad, you're going to be sick in the bed. But if this ain't right, that's my slogan: get your mind right. What does it matter if you have this great physique or this great body, but you're mentally damaged or mentally toxic? So training people to learn the basic mental skills, nothing like super deep, because that's what people like you are for, but more so the like the general like mental skills, like learn about not just what motivation, like, oh, motivation, that word gets overused, but what does it truly mean? Intrinsic, extrinsic, locus of control, things that things that will I'm there. Oh, my phone rang. Sorry. But things that would help them with their everyday life. And like you said, this is something that isn't really being done, and I want to be the one to provide that.
Do you think that it helps with self-discipline? I know it can help with impulse control. So, like for example, when I'm working with people that are going through breakups or a life transition, a lot of times they want to do things that are compulsive and they have obsessive thoughts. So I saw you worked with impulsivity control. What is that about? What do you do with people? What does that actually look like since they can't see the drills? What does that look
Mhm.
like to control your impulses to maybe not call an ex or not do something that's maladaptive like drink? What is something that you do with people to help control their impulses?
Yeah. So with impulse control, that's literally a region of the brain for those out there. It's called frontal lobe. And while the psychological, like I'm big on both, obviously that's both my backgrounds, but psychological aspect is definitely needed. You have to learn strategies to not rebound to the X or eat that piece of cake or drink that bottle. But also there's like I said, the cognitive, that's what the brain is actually doing. So we would do drills, and a lot of people question because it doesn't mimic exactly what you do. And I always preach that it doesn't have to look exactly what you're doing, but the point is the same regions of the brain are being activated. So I'll do drills that require you to have to withstand, like if you've seen the fit light system, I use that a lot and it gets a lot of flack because they don't understand what I'm really doing. But the goal is present a stimulus. So a cue, like say red, don't go, which is classic because typically a red light and say driving means stop, and a green light go. So that's the simplest I can do is I present you with a stimuli that dictates one or the other. But then I'll take it to another level because in real life, it's never that cut and dry. So I'll have some cool drills that'll be like, okay, red means stop, but then there'll be a small red light and that'll be go. And there'll be a big green light will be go and a small green light will be stop. So now you're being presented with four different stimuli, and then you have to make these choices. And even though it looks like a game, people compare it like Simon or Bop It or whatever, and that's cool. I've gotten over that. Early on, I used to get in my feelings about that, but
Uh-huh,
I accept it now. But
uh-huh.
basically, what's happening is you're training that same region that's associated with when you're emotionally in love and heartbroken. That's where the same center is housed in your frontal lobe. When you feel that feeling of like anger, I want to get back at my ex, or oh, I want to get back into someone that's hurt me. That's the same region. So we're training the physical component. I like to compare it to a muscle. If I'm playing football, for example, I may I could be 6'4", 220 pounds and be able to run fast, but I need to train the mechanisms that's going to make that body run fast. So same thing with impulse control. You have to be able to withstand calling that X, but I need to train the mechanisms that's going to literally control how I respond to different world distractions.
That's incredible. I honestly think that is life changing. When I think about people with mood disorders like bipolar disorder, schizoaffective disorder, bipolar subtype, people that have impulses to drink, impulses to binge eat, things like that. That's incredible because we would have put those in rehabs or residential treatment centers if we thought about that at the time. If I was in one now, I would implement the same thing, bring someone like you in because that is so necessary. They're really impulsive and it's hard to control. And sometimes talk therapy isn't enough, and that's where you have to bring in and be creative and actually work on the cognitive conditioning like that. It's amazing. So,
Well,
what
it's
about?
funny you bring that.
Oh,
Oh, I'm sorry.
no, tell me.
Well, because you brought up addiction and treatment center, so that's part of the story. I guess I skipped over. So when I was making that transition from working more on the physical side to now what I'm doing,
Mhm.
the first real tester for what would become Mind Body One was in a treatment center. I was actually an assistant to a psychologist named Dr. Rick Harris. We haven't spoken probably since I worked there, but I like when I had my daughter, I was trying to find work. I was a teacher for a little bit, got laid off. I was working at Target unloading trucks, working in the toy aisle, putting toys on the shelf with a master's degree. And I'm like, what am I doing? So I saw this job posting on Craigslist at an addiction center for an assistant to a psychologist. So he had like two, I think, at the time. He had two centers and two private practices. So he put me in the addiction center, but he asked me like, why do you want this job? You have a master's degree in sports psychology and this is below your pay grade. It was like $11 an hour. But I was like, I want to learn. So I already had a semi background in the psychological field. So I was doing testing, working with the
Nice.
patients, doing like different clinical testing, and he would score them obviously. But that's where he would be like, you know what? I want to use that background. And I'm like, what do you want? He's like, I want you to make a program that makes us thinking mental with the physical. and he called it the mind body connection.
Yeah.
And I made up a little protocol, and this was my first tester, and it was with the addicted population. And you probably know just well, like that's not an easy crowd,
No, it's
and
not.
they loved it. And I'm like, that's when I really thought like I might have something here because I had them, like you said, it's an alternative. They still did their regular therapy, they still did their other treatment plans, but this was an addition. Like I always tell people, this is a tool. This is not an end all be all. I work with the best athletes in the world. I would never be like, you don't need that training stuff. Come work with me. Like, no, I just give you something extra. So I sorry I go on a tangent, but
No, it's
that
great.
made me
No,
think of
it the creative aspects, like the things that were ancillary that came on, ended up being some of the most critical components. Like there was a spiritual coach that came on, their boxing coaches came on. That stuff can be critical because now, let's say you're finding your passion or you're just getting yourself positively distracted with a new hobby, something like that. That can be critical because that can pull you in and positively distract or just give you some new inspiration. So they need these packages in different forms to see what's going to work because not just one thing isn't going to work for everybody. Absolutely. It's incredible. So tell me, what does it look like visually to be working with some of these top athletes like UFC, Dustin Poirier, we have Demetrius Johnson, Junior De Santos, all these UFC fighters, Timbaland. What are they coming to you for exactly? Is there a range of things? What exactly would they come to you for? And what does that look like?
That's a good question because it's so many. Like I pride Mind Body One being this resource for different facets because I've learned different facets. So like for the fighters, they come for me more so on the mental cognitive side. They're not doing too much like I integrate physical stuff, but
Mhm.
it's not going to be the emphasis because they have their boxing coach, they have their grappling coach, they have their strength and conditioning coach, who's a good friend of mine. His name's Phil Daru. So they all have their roles. So those guys typically come to me so they can be able to respond better under pressure and quick decisions because their matches are 5 minutes per round, 3 rounds per match, and five if it's a championship. And I've been fortunate enough to work with a lot of championship level guys, so I've had a lot of 5 round fighters on my resume. So it's like they're coming to say, how long can I be stimulated during that duration? Because 5 minutes is not a long time, but
Mhm.
the weird thing about a sport like uh, MMA is that it's just you. Like I played football, I played
Mhm.
baseball.
Mhm.
These are times I'm not gonna always be in every play. Sometimes I'm the man on the tackle. Sometimes I'm the man on the field. Sometimes I'm not. MMA is always you. So we do some things that I'll literally make the duration of the drill 5 minutes long, and that's very monotonous, very boring. And I'm not gonna say who or what, but there's been times where they want to just walk away. Something seems rudimentary as a number memorization or reacting to some light, but you believe it or not, like over that duration, you're in your thoughts and you really got to think. And that's where my psychological background comes in. I'll be looking at their body mannerisms. I'll be looking at their tight and tense or breathing a certain way. And so personality psychology is something I really like got like really immersed in because one of my mentors, he's like a lead personality psychologist named Ryan Sherman. And so I like to take those elements too. So I'm looking at like different traits and how to associate them. And I teach them these things. Like they're learning about the big five factor or something. I'll keep it simple, but it's like I'm trying to relate it to their sport, extroversion or neuroticism, something like that, because I can see that on them and be like, this is what you're doing, and they won't even realize it. It's crazy because these drills can not only show me scores and how good their brain's firing, but it tells me a lot about how they are. And I'm a firm believer of what you do in one thing is what you do in most things. So if they're cursing themselves, oh man, I suck. And you'd be surprised some of the names that be saying this stuff. But it's like if they're saying that, they're human just like anyone else. And I can critique these and say, hey, did you realize you said this? And sometimes they won't even know. I'll show them a video of
That's
themselves.
incredible, Nick. So you're actually hitting it right in that moment and you're working on negative self-talk, but in a
Mhm.
stimulating and fun environment. Oh,
Exactly.
brilliant.
To test, like you can put the test in real time, the actual work you teach, because now you can see it. Because why wait to the fight to see it? Like that's
Yeah.
dangerous. Like, did it work? Is he doing better? But I get to see it in real time and say, okay, this is what you did, this is what you should probably look at, and then I'll add something else or take something out, or I'll give them some breathing techniques. I have a drill I do called breath bars, where I literally I got the idea from like your cell phone has the bars for the service.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
I made a sequence where it builds up and goes down. But while that's happening, there's different stimuli like colors or numbers, and they have to memorize it. So they're breathing on the tempo. And I'll do that between sets when they're getting frustrated. So now I'm giving these cues and not saying this is the end all be all, but when you teach that, now they're getting more aware. And this like now they're mindful of what they're doing. Cause you'd be surprised how many of these athletes do not realize how many like bad tells they're giving away. And and not just in fighting, but in any sport, this is going to be a giveaway to your opponent that you don't want to give. You
No,
need everything to be, on your favor. Why give them that benefit? Oh, he's looking a little weak there, or he's looking a little gassed there. I want you to be able to say, I'm aware of what I am right now. They don't need to see it. That's how I look at it.
that makes so much sense. So if they're at home, obviously, where do you train out of? Where do you train out
So
of?
I'm in Deerfield Beach, Florida. It's about 30 minutes north of Miami. So
Yeah.
that's how most people be like, "Where's Deerfield Beach?" Or Fort Lauderdale, about 15 minutes from Fort Lauderdale. And I have my own facility now, but for the past 2 years, I was working like on site. Like I would go to like American Top Team.
Yeah.
Uh, that's
American
one of the
Top
top.
Team. Wow.
Mhm. The headquarters is right down the street, like
Yeah.
literally 10 minutes from
That's
where
a
I'm at
mixed
right
martial arts famous place.
now.
That's
So
incredible.
I'll
So
go.
yeah, but it'd be worth it to go down and train with you. Do you ever do Zoom or do you make packages for people? Yeah.
So yes, so given COVID-19, I had to pivot and figure out different means to administer different things. So I've had a few people. So I've done a lot of, I would say, webinars. Actually, I work with a company called Aetna Insurance.
Mm,
So they're a huge insurance company. I
mhm,
think I know they're national, but I work with the South Florida departments, and
mhm,
they get me gigs. So they'll have contracts with like say police departments, school boards,
mhm.
cities, and they'll basically whatever country they have, they're like, hey, we need a webinar on X, Y, and Z. And since they know what I do, like I've been fortunate to get a lot of work more recently now because it's like I do things on stress, so it's things like that, but I don't do things
Stress.
more
Oh,
on the
tell us about de-stressing. So what do you teach? What are they? These employees of Aetna? What are you
yeah.
teaching them as
Well,
far as
actually, they're employees of the contractors,
oh, the
so
contract.
they'll have like school board. So say one lady, let's say Jackie, she has Broward School Board, and then say Lisa has Broward Sheriff's Office. So they'll call me and be like, "Hey,
Mhm.
I need you to work with the lieutenant of BSO, or I need you to work with XY middle school." Is basically that's how it goes. So it'll literally be
Yeah.
a specific person or actual school or whole department. So I get fortunate enough to get these opportunities, and it's pretty
Mm.
good because you get more people at once. So I'm kind of happy that not say happy COVID happened, but it gave me another avenue, and I had to think on my feet because all the in-person stuff got taken away. So for months I didn't really have much going on, so I had to figure it out. But
Oh,
yeah,
yeah.
so far as the stressing, so I like I'm a former teacher and I still teach part time at a college down here called Broward College as an adjunct. And my course is called Total Wellness, but I kind of rigged the curriculum with my cognitive conditioning course
Mhm.
that I actually sell on my site. And I just put that in place, and the dean was all for it. She loves what I do. Like I didn't even tell her for like maybe 3 years. She didn't know what I did outside of teaching, and she found out through a student who saw me on ESPN with Dustin Poirier, and he was like, "Oh,
Nice.
Mr. Davenport works with Dustin Poirier," and she called me in her office. I thought I was in trouble, so I'm like, "What I do?" And then she was like, "How come you don't tell no one what you do outside of here?" I'm like,
Mhm.
"I don't know." And I've gotten bad slaps from my friends, like, "You don't really talk about yourself enough." So I've been better about marketing, like on social media and stuff.
Yeah,
But
that's
basically, getting the word out there. And well, going back to the main point, see, but my mind rants too. But teaching is I feel the best tool. Like getting people to learn these things. Like people always I seen more in like my field, the sports side stuff for the mental skills training. I'm not sure how it is in the actual clinical world, but a lot of them veer away from trying to educate. I noticed it's like
mhm.
let me tell you what to do.
Mhm.
Learn these methods from a more so
Yeah.
student standpoint. I want you to learn it from not an expert or practitioner, but at least to a point where you can learn it to know it for yourself. I don't want you to have to be weaning off of me forever. Isn't that the end goal for them to be
Ooh.
on their
That is so my methodology. Like I am so about that. I think it's because when I was going through school, I was a personal trainer. So they taught us, we knew the research, right? The more we gave them autonomy, the more likely they were going to sustain that workout regimen. So if
own?
you and I are not teaching the actual skills and not wanting them to wean off of us, I don't feel like they're going to get be as autonomous as they need to be to actually make this sustained. If we're not accessible the rest of their lives or they can't afford it or whatever it is, they need to be able to learn all this, and no matter if it's a clinical world or coaching, and like yours especially. But that's so cool that that is your that just shows how genuine you are about what you do, that you don't want them to be dependent, you want them to learn as much as possible and go ahead and apply that in their daily lives. That's really cool. It's very genuine.
Pride in it. Like when I see an athlete or a client or someone tell another, like when I work with Phil at his facility up in Boca Raton,
Mhm.
it'll be like 4 or 5 fighters, and some work with me more frequently than others. So the ones that have like a little more work with me, they'll talk to them like, "Oh yeah, the frontal lobe and this," and it's like that makes me proud because while they're not an expert and they can't like go teach a lecture, they can do
Yeah.
that. It
Yeah.
makes it worth like saying they get it to the point that it can help them, and now they're telling other people. So that person not saying they need to come to see me, that'd be cool, but it's like they're spreading what I'm teaching because now it's something relevant to them and it can help more. And I'm big on the industry. Like I got a lot of flack from some of my associates, like you got to worry about yourself and all this. And I'm like, I get that to the from the business aspect, but from the bigger picture, the mental field wise made leaps and bounds, whether it's therapy or what I'm doing or whatever, it still has a long way to go, I feel. And
Mhm.
I'm glad that more people are more openly about therapy, but it's like there's other facets that aren't getting love and looks. And I feel like it will never happen if we don't, like you said, get these people to be autonomous. Because if it's a secret, like, oh, I only know what he tells me, that means they have to keep coming back to me and it'll never grow any further than the individual.
What would you tell someone that's going through a life transition? I'm sure you've worked with people with a lot of pain, or maybe they lost a job, or they're going through a divorce, a breakup, something like that. What would you tell them as far as like whether it's motivational or something they can do at home? What do you think? What would be the first thing that you would tell them when they're just always obsessing about the past and having a hard time moving forward with their identity? What would you tell them to do, like a trick or just some motivation?
That's a good question. So a little bit of both. Like my personal philosophy, like it's not like the word, but I'm big on like writing your own story because if you, I like to use analogy like don't give them your pen because it's like it's my story. Now, obviously, they played a role because I'm big on not disregarding that because that's probably the worst you could tell a person hurting or going through a tough time is, oh, don't worry about it.
Mm-hmm.
No, worry about it, but what exactly are you worrying on first, and then what are you going to do after that? Because I want you to feel the pain because that's needed. That we got to learn what's happening because guess what? If you ignore it, it's going to come back in an unhealthy way, either through drinking or promiscuity, or it's coming out some way.
That's right.
Projection on another person is going to come out. So let's neutralize it and see what's going on, and then we can build from it. Because once I understand, okay, this is what role I played, this is what role they played, and that's another thing I like to look at. What role did you play? I'm not saying the victim blame, of course, but we all play a role, and that goes back to writing your own story. You have the pen. Don't give them your pen. Write your own path, and after that, build from it. Like, did this make me so detrimental to my journey or my goal that I can't rebuild? If not, either build again or pivot to something else. I'm big on I use the word pivot a lot because I did it myself. Like things weren't working out in one lane, so I just kind of just stepped to another one. Kind of, I was doing fitness, I was doing psychology, I was gonna be a psychologist,
Mhm.
but I was like, no, what? I'm just gonna step a little bit this way, and I found my path that way. I didn't go backwards. I didn't try to start over. I just said, let me take what I already have and working it apply somewhere else. And I think people, I don't know if it's fear of change, maybe. And I'm big on fear. I've been scared to change myself, but it's like that fear has to be overcome to some degree. You know, I'm not saying you got to jump in the fire, but I tell people like you got to take it on. A lot of people will combat that because it's scary. I get it. We're programmed by nature, you know, fight or flight to be worried. But it's like, is that worry always relevant? You know?
And take it on, like, in this practical sense, it would be like, I would think take it on as far as habituating to some new skill or some new hobby or something you've never done before, doing something that is actually that counters wanting to do something that's harmful or that isn't working for you. But definitely or going for the dreams, I feel like in that case, because going in and building your identity can really remove a lot of that negative thinking because now you're so filled up and you're going in the direction of building something of your own. And that can be so hard because you just want to get stuck in, you can get dopamine hits, feel good hits by obsessing over someone from the past. And that's not the
Yep.
kind of hit you want because unfortunately that taps into the motivational part of the brain, as you know, and now you're going to want to keep doing that over and over again. So I think you're right, building new habits and overcoming that fear by just doing something different. And that's why a coach like you is so important because you're building new habits and you are conditioning them to do things and think better and be more adaptive in their daily lives, even.
Well, it's funny you mentioned dopamine, getting to the neural side of it, because I do talk to people when they do some of my stuff because the neurons firing is just it's like repetition. It's what's called Hebbian theory, like neurons that fire together wire together. So I tell people if you're depressed or anxious or whatever it may be, and you keep ruminating on those thoughts, guess what? You're making that neuron connection stronger,
Stronger.
stronger. And then people don't realize there's a lot of links with depression and with the deterioration of the neurons you want to fire. So now you're building up the neurons that are memorizing the bad stuff, and then you're deteriorating neurons that need to be the good stuff because it's still there. And that's the beauty of like the science of it, it's always gonna be there. Like you don't lose memories. People get a misconception. Memories basically just patterns. I always say, like when I teach this in my class, I'll put like A, B, C, D, and they'll be spread out, and I'll be like, I'll do A to B, and I'll be like, that's your first kiss. A to B to C is falling off the bike when you're learning. A to D would be graduating from college. So it's like how many, and I'll just go over them more and more, and I'll be like the one that's like sad. If you're depressed, you're just going to that one more. So say A to Q is sadness for whatever happened to you, and A to Q has like 100 lines connected versus A to D when your first kiss was or whatever the good memories were. And it's like you're literally training your brain to be better at remembering the things that are detrimental. So obviously it's deeper than that. It's more to it than just the neural aspect. But that's a cool thing to look at. It's like, wow, I'm really building these stronger connections. Literally, like these are real connections, and those neurons just get stronger and stronger until that's all you really know. And it's going to be harder. And people say it's not that easy. And like, yeah, because you don't practice it. If I don't practice, let's say taking it to sport, if I want to be faster, but only practice squatting, I'll get stronger legs, but I'm not going to run faster necessarily. So it's like you're just practicing the wrong things, really.
Mhm. What do you think someone could do at home for thought stoppage when they just keep thinking about things that aren't helping them? What would you do at home, or what would you tell one of your clients to do at home?
So I actually have a thing I use that I learned a while back, and I use it a lot with athletes. They loved it. You probably familiar with it. It's called error parking.
No, I don't think so. What is that? Mm-mm.
So basically, error parking is when you address, like, say, the negative thought or the negative scenario.
Mhm.
And what I'll tell them is, and you can use anything. That's the beauty of the creativity of the mind. So, say, let's use you failed the math test. So instead of being like, oh my gosh, I'm so stupid, I'm dumb, I'll never get into college or I'll never graduate, whatever it may be, those thoughts aren't really going to help you. Like, I'm not saying you can't still pass the next test, but I doubt that's going to help it. So it'd be like, okay, I passed the test. I mean, I failed the test. What happened? Did I study enough? Okay, I did, but maybe I didn't study these subjects. What subjects of that test did I get wrong? A lot of people won't even look at that. They'll be just like, I failed the test and that's it. Versus like,
Mhm.
well, I got 80% right on the anatomy section, but the nervous system, I failed. So then you say, okay, that's when I address. So where the error parking comes in, you visualize say for example, a fire. The fire is the failed test, and you see the fireman like get very deep into this picture, like seeing it in your head, and then you see a fireman putting the flames out with a hose, and that's the uplifting thought or the productive thought. So it's kind of like seeing the imagery of like, okay, the fire, the test, the fire's put out.
Yeah.
Now I can build from that. So it's basically that. That's the, you can use anything. You can use a piece of
That's
paper
good.
balled up. So like I use
Yeah.
that one. And it's like I have like little cards and stuff. Like I like to use a lot of like say with drills. I have drills. I have actual cards I'll print out. Like I have one called Wake Up Accountability. I use this with one of BSO's higher ups that he was going through some tough times, and he loved it because it was basically like I said. I just take really. I tell people because people say, "Oh, this next level is different," and I like, well, I'm not really doing anything new per se. I'm just taking things that I've learned and we've learned over our coursework and say, let me apply it in a different manner. So Wake Up Accountability is just a card that I'll print out, and it'll be the whole week, Monday through Sunday. And the first part would be, I call it first hour. So all you do is write what you did in that first hour. And I use this a lot, and people be surprised, like, dang, I'd be wasting time. Like some people be like, I just watched or I looked on Instagram feed all morning,
Mhm.
or I was just sitting in the bed. And some of the opposite, like, okay, I got this, I got this. But the beauty is you now know. That's why you're accountable for it. Then the second one would be motivation for the day. So what is the reason you're trying to do what you do today? And then the third part would be the end goal. So what do you want to outcome at the end of this day? Just for this day. So don't get over Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, just today. And then the last part is self-talk. So one phrase, no more than a sentence of what's going to get you through this day. And he did that simple technique, and it's like he was like, I really wasn't aware of how much I was stressing on things, putting energy in things that weren't pertinent to what I want to do. And this is like a higher up, he deals with a lot of stuff, and something simple as that gave him like I said, education. It just taught him a skill that where he can be accountable for himself. It wasn't me saying, "What'd you do today? How was
Mhm.
your day? Did you get better? Did you feel better?" Like obviously you check up on them, but it's like you don't need me for that. And I know that seems counterproductive, like not to need you. But at the end of the day, I'm confident that more things will come from this. So I'm not gonna be like, bye, and what I'm gonna do and what I'm gonna eat for dinner tonight. So it's like these are things I like to do to get, these simple techniques that I can say I'm not reinventing anything. I'm just taking what I've learned. Like, you know the movie Slumdog Millionaire?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So you remember how the whole movie, I actually used this when I was still doing my doctorate in my personality theories class. I called it the Slumdog Millionaire effect because I based it on how I learned everything. Because people are like, how do you know this or do this? Because indirectly, I got put in a lot of situations. Like I was working at a mental health hospital to support my daughter. I didn't
Mhm.
think that the stuff I learned there would be as pertinent as now. I worked at the addiction center to learn just basic stuff. I ended up getting the thing that would launch Mind Body One. So it's like everything I did from pretty much a kid to now, I was actually one of the top. This is the nerd in me. A competition called Presidents. It's called academic games, and one category is Presidents, and I was one of the best in the county. And my county's pretty big, so it's like all these things led up to why I know and do what I do because they built me up. So people like to specialize, and that's great. But I was like, why not take something from every bit of your life? And that's literally what Mind Body One is. It's taking the neuroscience, the psychology, the cognitive science, the physiology. Like we need all of those. That's why it's Mind Body One. You don't have any of the other ones without each other. I use this thing called the race car analogy, where the actual frame and the working parts of a car. So think of like a race car, and the body, the tires. I would say that's more so the cognitive function. These are things that push the car to go. But the engine, that's more like the neuro side because this is the inner workings that power the whole car. And then the psychology is driver because the driver's behavior is what's going to affect where the car goes and what it does, whether it spins out of control, crashes, turns left, turns right, cuts someone off. So it's like all those parts make the race car what it is. You can't have a good driver in a bad car. You can't have a bad car with a good driver. Jeff Gordon in a Prius is not winning any races, and me in a NASCAR is not winning any races. I'm going to crash,
Yeah.
and that's where I see our mental state is. We need all those parts.
Yeah, we do. We really do. So, like, one example is you'll throw a tennis ball while the other person is what, trying to shoot hoops, or what is that drill? I see that a lot.
Oh, that so that see that's the beat of my drills. They look so simple on visual, but when you
Yeah.
actually do them, the first thing people say is that's harder than it looks.
Yeah.
So that drill you're talking about, my friend Darius, he's actually a skater, a pro skater, but he loves basketball, so he helped me out with that drill because I stink at basketball. I'm good at a lot of sports, but basketball wasn't one of them. But so what happens is decision making. So he'll dribble up, and I have a cone or something to split us. I think I had a stand, and I'll call out odd or even number or equation, I should say. So say 2 plus 3, that's 5. If it's odd, he breaks left. If it's even, he breaks right. Now he has to make decisions. So if I don't do anything after he calls it, he just drives through and lays it up. Now, if I throw the tennis ball, he has to quickly catch it and then pass me the ball, and I lay it up. So he has to choose: am I one going which way, which direction? Two, am I just driving through, or am I passing to my teammate? And three, finish. And then I'll mix that up with other cues. Like I might be like a certain hand off a certain number. So let's say if it's odd, he has to catch the tennis ball with his left hand, even. So you're just adding that cognitive load. So now he's getting more stimuli to attend to. So the more stimuli, the harder it is. Now, also, one thing he kept saying is like, man, there's a lot going on. Is like you get under pressure now. And the actual pressure is just like
Mhm.
a weight. You put more weight on the body, it has to accommodate and get stronger. Same thing with this. In real time, he's getting to figure out how does he compose himself when there's a lot going on. So it's not necessarily to say it's going to make him a better basketball player. It's just a relevant uh, cue of dribbling and shooting or whatever, but adding that mental load to make it harder. So when it's without it, now it's like, okay, if I did this doing all of that, what's one defender in my face going to be? And that's literally the premise. Like you take off that external load, you're going to be stronger or better in this case.
Yeah, it's so amazing with the confidence building, like you talked about earlier, where actually if you're creating that artificial stress, you're actually seeing all their negative self-talk. So you're able to see and like pull back the mask of what's going on because we know a lot of times the more genuinely confident athletes are the ones that win. Same thing with I think politicians. So people have to feel very confident if they're going to go all the way through. So that's incredible that you're seeing all the way through in real time and that quickly. You're developing rapport so quickly and teaching them in a really, really effective, efficient manner. It's so incredible. It's great to watch. People have to check out your IG, Mr. Mental Muscle. And where can they find you, Nick?
So honestly, that's probably the best place. I got a website, www.themb1.com. But honestly, most of my content, because I'm always posting stuff daily, and I got a YouTube channel. Actually, I'll plug that too, the Mental Breakdown, where I take. I don't know if you saw that one. I take what would seem to be unrelated topics and make them make sense with each other and break down the psychological aspect. Like I did one called the Netflix Brady effect, and that's basically describing why do underdogs get slept on. And I actually broke down the psychological reasons using real science, but I made it like creative because Netflix, give a sneak preview, there's a lot of correlation between Netflix and Tom Brady. You're like, how? Go watch it. But anyway, so I'll do stuff like that. I did a 10 man effect last week, Valentine's Day. Matter of fact, you would probably really like that one because it pertains to love and relationships. So, but and that not to get on the side tangent, but it's like I love the aspect too of what you do because watching your TikToks and stuff, that's great because a lot of people first thing they say is, "What now? He's gone. She's gone. What now?" I've lived it too.
Yep.
I've gone through where I spent 2 3 months just wondering what happened, what did I do wrong, beating myself up. So having a resource like that at the blink of an eye, like in 30 seconds to a minute, is great because you don't have time to necessarily always read a book or a webinar or a podcast, but to get 30 seconds or a minute of quick tips, that I've never seen anything like that.
Mm. Yeah, I just really love your spirit. I love the coaching piece and the motivational part. And you light up when you're teaching, Nick. It's like people resonate with that stuff, and it shows that you're trying to give all this to the world, and you definitely don't believe in scarcity. You're trying to give it out, and all the good comes back to you, and people can really feel it. But that energy is definitely expressed on your IG, and I'm so glad that you came on today. We definitely have to do this again, and I'm so thankful that you came on. And I'll
Most
talk to
definitely.
you.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you, Nick.
All righty.